Have you ever noticed how the worst people sometimes seem to come out on top? They lie, they betray, they manipulate, and yet somehow life doesn't strike them down instantly. In fact, it looks like they're winning. But here's what Stoicism teaches us and what life eventually reveals. Karma doesn't settle its debts in public. It collects in silence, not when the world is watching, not when they're performing, but in the quiet moments when there's no audience, no applause, no escape from the echo of their own conscience. And this is where true justice begins. You see, a Stoic doesn't chase revenge. They don't stalk someone's downfall or shout their pain to the world. They observe, they let go, they trust something deeper. That time is the great revealer, and karma never forgets. This video isn't about vengeance. It's about truth, the kind of truth that doesn't scream to be heard, because some truths don't need volume. They only need silence, and in that silence, something extraordinary happens. Life begins to correct what the ego once tried to escape. So if you've ever been hurt and it feels like the world moved on without justice, stay with me, because what if I told you the universe isn't ignoring what happened? It's just speaking a different language, one that doesn't yell but whispers. And in those whispers, karma speaks loudest of all. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone walk away from your life after lying, betraying, or abandoning you, only to turn around and suddenly become the most radiant version of themselves online? It's almost like overnight they've healed. They're glowing, smiling, traveling, quoting deep philosophers, posting sunset selfies with vague captions like, "Growth looks good on me," or "Some people just weren't meant for your light." It's loud, it's polished, it's staged. And for a moment, you might even question yourself. You might think, maybe they really are better off without me. Maybe I was the one holding them back. But here's the truth that Stoicism and psychology both agree on: real healing is quiet. Real happiness doesn't need a campaign. Only insecurity needs a spotlight. Because when someone truly moves on, they don't announce it to the world. They simply move. Think about it. When you're at peace, do you need to prove it to anyone? No, you just feel it. You live it. You don't post a play-by-play. So when someone suddenly becomes a walking TED Talk on self-worth, right after they burned a bridge with you, what you're witnessing isn't confidence. It's performance. It's an emotional disguise, a mask for the guilt they refuse to face. If you look closely, the signs are always there. The smile a little too wide. The eyes empty. The energy desperate. It's like they're trying to outrun a shadow that's growing louder behind them. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What they're doing is trying to call their pain healing. But it doesn't work that way. You can change your clothes, your partner, your captions. But if you haven't faced what you did, if you haven't truly looked at yourself in the silence, then nothing changes. That's where karma begins to speak, not in thunder, but in whispers only they can hear when they're alone with their thoughts scrolling through likes but still feeling empty. You see, the louder someone tries to show the world that they've moved on, the more likely they haven't. Because if they had, they wouldn't be performing it. They wouldn't be advertising peace they haven't earned. A Stoic understands this. Epictetus taught us it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And Marcus Aurelius reminded us the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. So what do we do in response? We stay silent. We observe. We let go. Because the goal isn't to win. It's to be free. Let them post. Let them pretend. Let them build their stage. You don't need to prove your peace. You just need to live it. And that's what karma respects most. Not your rage, not your explanation, but your stillness, your clarity, your refusal to engage in a performance. So if you've been watching someone who once hurt, you try to convince the world they're thriving, remember this. That kind of noise doesn't come from strength. It comes from a mind trying to silence its guilt. Let them play the part, because deep down they know they're not healed, they're haunted, and nothing screams louder than a soul trying to convince itself it feels nothing at all. Let me tell you a secret about karma. It doesn't always strike like lightning. It doesn't always come with thunder, public shame, or instant collapse. No, karma is quieter than that. It's subtle, it's surgical, and often it begins with one simple act: removal, not punishment, just subtraction bit by bit. A friend drifts away, an opportunity slips through the cracks. A door they thought would always stay open quietly closes. And the most painful part, they can't even trace it back to one moment. Because that's how karma works when you've taken people for granted, especially the ones who brought you love, patience, loyalty, and truth. See, when someone mistreats a person who genuinely cared, when they mocked forgiveness, laughed at loyalty, or used someone's goodness as a cushion for their own chaos, karma doesn't scream. It just walks them into a life where those things become scarce, where sincerity is rare, where loyalty has a price, where patience dries up fast. They start to look around and realize something's missing. But it's not just you they've lost. It's the version of themselves they used to be when you were around. Think about that. When someone truly loved and believed in them, they were better. They laughed more honestly. They slept more peacefully. They didn't feel the need to manipulate or wear a mask. But once that person is gone, once you are gone, they slowly lose access to that softer, stronger, truer version of themselves. That's not something they can replace with a new relationship or a new job or 1,000 likes online. Because it's not just about losing someone who cared. It's about losing the person they were when someone cared for them. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "Time discovers truth." And when karma arrives quietly, it often uses time as its delivery method. Not vengeance, not revenge, just a slow unraveling of what once felt untouchable. They might not even realize it right away. They'll just start to feel off, disconnected, uninspired. Things that used to excite them suddenly feel empty. The praise they once lived for feels shallow. The people they replaced you with start to seem hollow. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. When you mistreat someone who brought real value to your life, you're not just disrespecting a person, you're disrupting your own ecosystem. You've removed the sunlight and wonder why things won't grow. You've silenced the honesty and wonder why no one tells you the truth. You've taken love for granted. And now even affection feels suspicious. This isn't about punishment, it's about balance. Life has a strange way of bringing people back into alignment, and sometimes that means taking away what they didn't appreciate until they're ready to understand its worth. This is why silence matters, because your silence is not absence, it's witnessing. It's the most powerful form of presence, the kind that lets life do the talking. You didn't need to yell. You didn't need to shame. You just stepped away. And now the void is speaking louder than any confrontation ever could. And if you're watching someone who once dismissed your kindness start to lose the very things they once mocked, it's not your job to feel satisfied. It's your cue to release them even further. Because the moment they begin to miss what they once took for granted is the moment they begin their own journey back to truth. Whether they make it there or not, that's not your burden to carry. You did your part. You showed up with love. You gave them your best. And when they couldn't honor it, you let the silence take over. And the silence is doing exactly what it's meant to. Let life whisper to them what your words never could. Have you ever come across someone's post or message that felt like a riddle? But somehow, deep down, you knew it was about you. They didn't mention your name. They didn't tag you. But every word dripped with unspoken emotion, regret, pride, bitterness, longing. That is karma. not the explosive, dramatic kind, but the quiet, psychological kind, the kind that whispers instead of shouts. See, one of the clearest signs that karma is working isn't in what someone does. It's in what they can't stop thinking about, especially when that someone once hurt you, dismissed you, or treated you like you were disposable. Now, they talk about growth. They post quotes about healing, forgiveness, and moving on. But those words don't land with truth. They land with tension, because underneath all that wisdom is your ghost. And here's the paradox. They want to be noticed by you, but they don't want to admit that they still care. So they communicate in riddles, speaking around you rather than to you. And what they don't realize is this unspoken obsession is still obsession. And karma doesn't need public proof. It only needs the truth within. You see, Stoic philosophy teaches us that the mind is our greatest battleground. As Epictetus said, you may not control events, but you can control how you respond to them. But those who've wronged you, they're not in control anymore. Their thoughts have become haunted hallways, and every corridor leads back to the version of you they couldn't value. They may be in a new relationship. They may be surrounded by friends, smiling, performing happiness. But at night, when the noise fades and the mask slips, the silence grows loud. That's where karma shows up, not as punishment, but as a mirror. A mirror they can't stop looking into, one that reflects what they lost. One that forces them to ask, what if I had handled that differently? What if I didn't push them away? What if I was wrong? And here's the part that might surprise you. They might not even fully understand why they're still thinking about you. It's not always because they want you back. Sometimes it's because the version of themselves that existed around you was their favorite version, and they haven't seen that person since. That's the cruel beauty of karma. It doesn't always take things away. Sometimes it leaves behind memories that ache louder than absence. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone named Eli. He ended things with a good woman because he thought there was more out there. He felt bored, distracted, hungry for freedom. Now it's been months. He scrolls past her name on social media, sees her smiling with people he doesn't know, and feels something unexpected. Not jealousy, not desire, but displacement. Because the moment he left, he also left behind the parts of himself that only came alive around her. He starts writing vague posts about energy, quotes Rumi, or Marcus Aurelius talks about real ones and fake love. But we know the truth. His soul is searching for something his pride won't let him say out loud. And the Stoic response, silence. Because your silence isn't absence, it's strength. You're not playing the same game. You're not trading posts or sending signals or writing back in code. You've outgrown that arena, and now, without even trying, your existence is still making noise in someone else's head. That, my friend, is a form of justice that words can't deliver. And the best part, you don't need to do anything. Because karma doesn't ask for revenge, it asks for awareness, and they're living in it, in the loop of their own thoughts, where the only escape is accountability and growth. So if you've ever wondered, do they still think about me? Do they regret what they did? Will they ever admit it? Here's your answer. They already have. Not in words, but in obsession, in silence, in the inability to forget someone they once acted like they didn't need. And you just keep walking. You don't need their apology. You don't need to be tagged, because their conscience is doing the talking for them. And your peace? It's the only response they'll ever truly hear. Sometimes karma doesn't come as a breakup. It doesn't arrive as failure or loneliness or regret shouted out loud. Sometimes karma whispers. And when it does, it sounds like self-doubt. Here's something most people never talk about. After someone betrays a good person, they rarely walk away unscathed. On the outside, they might look fine, new relationship, fresh start, filtered smiles. But inside, a quiet war begins. not with the person they hurt, but with their own mind. Because once you've broken the trust of someone genuine, someone who showed up with honesty, kindness, and consistency, you don't just lose them. You lose the part of yourself that could be trusted, and that's where karma begins its quiet work. They start to look at the world through a cracked lens. They question everyone's intentions. Are they using me? Do they really care? What if they leave too? But the truth is, they're not afraid of other people's betrayal. They're afraid of their own, because deep down they remember. They remember how easily they ignored the one person who had their back. They remember the texts left unread, the cold silences, the moments they laughed at someone who cried for them. And the worst part, no one else knows. No one else saw what they did, but they did. And now that guilt has nowhere to go, except inward. That's when trust dies, not just in others, but in themselves. You see, trust isn't just about what others do to you. It's about what you do when no one's watching. And when you've crossed a line, you can't uncross. When you've burned a bridge that was built with nothing but love, you start to question whether you're even capable of love anymore. And that's karma in its most psychological form. Not punishment, not revenge, but the quiet erosion of peace. Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." But what happens when your ambition was rooted in ego, in proving something, in winning an argument, in escaping something beautiful before it got too real? You win. But it feels hollow, because once you've hurt someone who meant well, you begin to fear that the next person might do the same to you. And here's the twist. That new fear doesn't come from others. It's born from the seed you planted. Let me give you an example. Think of someone named Naomi. She had a partner, Jonah, who loved her deeply. He was thoughtful, supportive, patient, but she mistook his emotional availability for weakness. She craved drama, mystery, adrenaline. So she left. She found someone new, someone who was thrilling but unpredictable, exciting but emotionally distant. Months passed, and something started happening. She began to wonder if her new partner was lying. She began checking his messages, overthinking his silences, replaying every glance. But the truth, the distrust wasn't about him. It was about her. Because after hurting Jonah, she no longer believed she deserved someone who wouldn't hurt her back. That's the fourth sign of silent karma. When you lose the ability to believe not just in others, but in your own worthiness, to be loved, respected, and safe. And that loss, it doesn't shout, it doesn't make grand declarations. It seeps in through sleepless nights, missed opportunities, emotional distance in new relationships. It shows up when they push good people away, because deep down they think, if I could hurt someone like that, maybe others will hurt me too. This isn't about justice. It's about consequence, the kind that lives in the psyche, that reshapes how you view the world and yourself. And if you've ever been on the receiving end, if you've been the one left behind, the one betrayed, ignored, abandoned, let me say this: your silence is not weakness. It's a mirror. And the longer you stay silent, the more clearly they start to see themselves, not through your eyes, but through the truth they've been avoiding. You don't have to explain. You don't have to expose them. You don't need revenge. Because karma isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the echo of a heart that can no longer trust its own reflection. And you keep walking, because peace doesn't come from being proven right. It comes from knowing you did right, and that knowing is something they may never feel again. Sometimes karma doesn't show up as punishment. It shows up as a mirror, and in that mirror, they see themselves clearly, maybe for the first time. One of the most profound forms of karmic return isn't external. It doesn't come as a public failure, a breakup, or even your absence. It comes when life introduces them to someone who is just like they used to be. Let me explain. We all walk through life with patterns, ways we speak, treat others, run from pain, or play with people's hearts. And if we never pause to examine those patterns, the universe finds a way to show us. So what does it do? It brings someone into our life who reflects our past behavior like a spiritual mirror. Let's say they once manipulated someone kind, testing how far love would stretch without offering respect in return. Let's say they used silence as punishment, withheld affection as control, or twisted truth to protect their ego. They got away with it. At least they thought they did. But years later, they meet someone who feels magnetic, charming, exciting, intense. They fall hard, and slowly something begins to shift. They start to notice the same games they once played, now being played on them. Late replies, hot and cold affection, words that sound caring but feel calculated, and that's when it hits them. This person isn't cruel, they're familiar. They're looking at a version of who they used to be, and suddenly all the excuses they once used, they don't work anymore. They feel what you once felt: confused, unseen, emotionally exhausted, and for the first time, they can't run. Because karma isn't a cosmic punishment, it's a teacher, and its greatest lesson comes through reflection. This is the fifth and most silent sign of karmic return when they meet their mirror. At first, it feels unfair. Why is this happening to me? They ask. But then the deeper question arises. Have I done this to someone before? That question lingers. It gnaws at their pride, and it humbles them, because what once felt like control now feels like chaos. What once felt like power now feels like pain. This isn't about revenge. This is about evolution. It's about giving the soul an opportunity to finally understand what their past behavior really meant. Not from your words, not from your tears, but through experience. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "Only the educated are free." But true education doesn't always come from books or lectures. It comes from living, from feeling, from falling into the same hole we once pushed someone else into, and finally realizing how deep it was. You see, life doesn't want to punish people. It wants to wake them up. And sometimes the only way to do that is to show them their reflection, walking, breathing, and treating them exactly as they once treated you. But here's the deeper truth. If you've been the one who was hurt, you don't need to wait around hoping for that moment. You don't need to witness their breakdown or hear their apology, because their karma isn't yours to manage, and their pain isn't your closure. Your peace comes from knowing this. You didn't deserve what happened, but you grew because of it. You healed, you evolved, and most importantly, you broke the cycle. That mirror wasn't for you, it was for them. Let life be the teacher. Let time be the lesson. Let silence be the medium. And while they're confronting the reflection of their own behavior, you're walking forward. Not with bitterness, but with wisdom. Because some people never say, "I'm sorry," but life says it for them. In the most poetic, unforgettable ways. There comes a point in your journey where you no longer seek revenge, not because you forgot what happened, but because your peace has become more valuable than your pain. You see, the most powerful response isn't to expose them, confront them, or prove your side of the story. It's to stay silent, not from weakness, but from wisdom. Karma doesn't need an audience. It works best in quiet rooms, behind closed doors, and within restless hearts. While you're out there building, healing, and evolving, karma is doing its job. And here's the truth that most never realize. The universe has a perfect memory. It forgets no intention, no word, no action. But it also doesn't rush. It waits until the lesson is truly understood. So no, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to rewrite the past or get the last word. Your silence is enough. Your growth is enough. Your life now is the loudest response you'll ever give. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's Stoicism in its purest form. We don't heal by retaliating, we heal by rising. When you stop chasing justice and start embodying peace, something powerful happens. You begin to reclaim your energy. You no longer seek closure from someone who was never capable of giving it. Because now you understand peace is the closure. Closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. A decision to stop waiting for the past to change and start creating a future that reflects who you've become. So if you're wondering whether they'll ever feel what you felt, whether they'll ever realize what they did, whether karma will ever knock on their door, don't worry. That's not your responsibility. Your role isn't to punish, it's to evolve. Because real power isn't about what happens to them. It's about who you become despite them. Let life take care of the rest. Let the silence echo what words never could. And walk forward knowing this: you didn't lose. You learned. And karma, it's never late. It's just patient. So breathe deep. You don't need to do anything. You've already done enough.